Peace and blessings, family. Come on in the room. I promised y'all that I would go live every day until September 9th, and I actually almost forgot. So thank you all for reminding me. So come on in the room. It says we're telling your followers that you started a live video. Okay. That works for me. Virtue Magazine, Assalamu alaikum. I am the Skywalker. Welcome, welcome. I said I was going live every day. This is my spiritual week from my birth anniversary up to September 9th. And so I said I was going to go live. Let me know where y'all chiming in from. Still Demetrius. I am the Skywalker, Virtue Mag, Hip Hop TC. Welcome, welcome. Come on in. Come on in the room. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you all. Miss Parker 007, welcome. Where you from, Miss Parker 007? Let me know where you from, sis. It's Louis Bruce. Where you from? It's Louis Bruce. And Jay Kareem. Assalamu alaikum. Ooh, we get everybody coming in when it's late, huh? See, I almost forgot. I had given my word, and then some of you all was DMing me like, okay, Norfolk, Virginia. I never been to Norfolk. I almost forgot. And then some of y'all DMing me like, I thought you said you was going live. So, okay. Yes, I am. No, I'm an August baby. Well, so my birth anniversary is August 30th, but then my spiritual birthday, when I got my ex, was September 9th. Wa alaikum salam. I am the Skywalker. Did y'all see that video I posted of that party that was in the museum, this museum down in Atlanta? I don't know how many of y'all saw that, but I posted it. It's on my timeline. If I was on my other system, I could play it for you all. But anyway, I posted it. I think it's the Museum of High Art. And it's a really beautiful museum. It's very historic. They have, yeah, Jay Kareem said, yes, exactly. Give me some eyeballs if you see it. I couldn't believe it either. But let me tell you, I can't tell you how many people have asked me, can I just, have a party? I had somebody wanted to do a rap concert at Sajdah house. And I already foresee that. I know how people take liberties. My grandmother used to say, you give a Negro an inch, he'll take a mile. I've already seen it, so I already know. I remember, and this is how easy it is for people who just think a certain way to break the rules. I remember at the medical center in Maryland, we used to just allow people to, wear what they wanted. We had name tags, and then I got into, they have branded scrubs, right? So we had branded scrubs, we had branded sweaters, we had some branded t-shirts, and just all kind of things that they could choose from to wear, and we would provide them that would keep them in uniform. And we try to mix it up a little bit because sometimes people on the front desk want to change it. Still Demetrius, people crazy. So they would ask me on Fridays, because that would be admin day. They would say, hey, do we have to wear our uniforms on Friday? It's admin day. And so finally, I was like, okay, no problem. People started coming in stretch pants, and somebody wore some literal tights that you could see through with holes in it, just all kind of stuff. After that, I said, no, uniforms every day. So when people, and I'm not talking about just lost found people or anybody asking to throw parties. I'm talking about Muslims and Christians talking about, yeah, I want to have a party at Sajdah house. Can I rent it out for my wedding? And when I saw that museum, and I was like, no, I made a note. I said, note to self. When we're putting together the rules for the foundation and the rules for, and the policies and procedures, you know, it's going to have to be no parties. Because we just, I think that if it was like Assalamu alaikum, Brother Hashim, I think that if it was like a upscale event where people were just kind of standing around chilling, talking, maybe like a fundraiser, then I could kind of see it. But the way they was getting down up in that museum, I was like, oh no, this is Wretched City. We got to do better with respecting and preserving our history. We just have to do better because we don't understand how critical it is that we preserve our history. See, part of the problem with our history is that not only has there been thousands of years of people changing history, Column Shabazz 36, welcome. Not only has there been years of them changing our history, right, and trying to keep it from us, but you know, when you get into this museum and preservation space, Mr. Bibe, welcome. Let me know where you from, Column and Mr. Bibe. When you get into this museum space and you start talking about, you know, over $5 million. When I say to people, look, I put over $5 million into the preservation of the Messenger's home and the development of a museum, they say, why? A lot of people say, why? And so they go about and their whole mindset is they don't get it. But in the museum space, in the preservation space for other cultures, that's not a lot of money. I mean, they be investing 50, 60 million in small spaces for preservation. I mean, they go all out for preservation. But when it comes to Black people and our history, not only are we not accustomed to valuing our history and attaching a certain amount of value to it, but other people are not accustomed to that kind of thing as well. They don't see the point of it. Like, why? What difference do it make? And so, you know, other cultures are trained to donate, to, you know, create endowments so that when they pass away, a certain amount of money goes to the museums. This is very common. It's also part of the preservation and the respect for our culture is part of the science of doing business as well. Because let me tell you, when we don't care about our history and we throw it away, a lot of that comes from lack of knowledge of self, not respecting ourselves, not knowing ourselves, with not accepting who we are and accepting ourselves. So when we see our culture, we don't love ourselves anyway, so we don't love the culture and we don't love what we represent because something deep down inside just doesn't respect self. And so when we don't respect self, we don't respect what we're a part of. A lot of times, even those of us that are Muslims, we struggle so much with being a Muslim because being a Muslim and the lifestyle is difficult. You know, I'm very open and upfront about just my struggles in business and striving to be in alignment with Allah. And it's hard. And so when you come into the Nation of Islam, that mirror goes up in front of you and you got to deal with yourself. And as you're seeking Allah, He's constantly showing you things about yourself and constantly dealing with yourself. And it ain't no joke. And so sometimes in that struggle, because of the trials and the challenges that we have within our nation, whether it be with others in the nation, whether it be our challenge to respect authority, whether it be authority's difficulty in handling us, or maybe we just don't like structure because we're not used to it, whatever the reason is, that subconsciously comes off in how we see the history and how we see the importance of the preservation of the history. And so we'll use any excuse. We'll tie it to a person. So, I don't really like Sister Sajdah. Well, why wouldn't she just, why don't she just go ahead and do it? Why, it's all kind of stuff that comes up. But when I saw what was happening in that museum, but now you're in there partying over ancient Nubian artifacts, because that's one of the exhibits that they have there. They have a lot of, I'm just talking about the African stuff. They have some art from West and Central Africa, but not looking at the space that houses our artifacts as sacred. See, if you were in Jerusalem and you had a museum that had artifacts from Jesus or Moses or David or Abraham or whomever it is, you'd have to approach that space with reverence. You would be taught, and they're going to tell you the rules of how you approach a sacred space. And this is one of the things, it's an aspect of culture and civilization that I want to teach our people, and I want to teach others to have for our culture, and especially for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because as you approach that space, there's a certain reverence that you should have in your energy. There's a certain mindset you should have. It's a certain way that you should think, even if it was ancient ruins, even if it was just, tore down and it was ruins. The fact that you're approaching this sacred space means that you should conduct yourself in a certain way. Now, granted, the museum where they were partying at, I don't know if the museum itself is a ancient museum or ancient space or anything, but in it is housed some very critical aspects or critical artifacts from our culture and our history. And it's just to be respected, just like Idor Kyla just said. It's got to be respected. And so those of you out there who talked about me and said all kind of stuff, because people couch things, right, and they think you don't know or you don't hear about it. And one thing about me, when I was very, very little, my grandmother used to snap at her friends. I can't pop my fingers, but she would pop her finger and say, "This one right here," pointing to me. And I was real little. She don't miss nothing. I don't miss nothing. But people get upset. I've heard the chit chatter like, well, I offered to do a fundraiser. I offered to do a concert in the back, or I offered to do an event. We even had, we've had a lot of people make suggestions on different ways in which to raise funds. A lot of them was people wanting to use the venue space for certain things, and it just has to be respected, and we have to hold out for that level of respect. It's so easy to get this scope creep when it comes to these venues and these events, because you may have one event today that's a beautiful fundraiser, and then the next time they may say, well, let's just let it be a stepper set, or let's do some salsa dancing, or let's just do a little lightweight house music. The next thing you know, that becomes lightweight juking, and next thing you know, you footworking, and next thing you know, it's all out ratchetness. It's a creep. And so I just don't think that that's something that we should be policing in a sacred space. Welcome, dear brother. Assalamu alaikum, Rob Bizen. I just don't think it's something we should be doing in a sacred space. So it has to be approached with reverence. We have to know, I've traveled around the country, around Chicago, and different places throughout the world, going to museum spaces and sacred venues and things like that. Places that house sacred artifacts and places that were themselves like ancient ruins and sacred spaces. And you're just taught to approach it in a certain kind of way. They will tell you, I remember being in Italy, and we were leaving the hotel going on a tour, and one of the first, Ty Grady One, welcome. One of the first stops on the tour on the Amalfi Coast in India was one of the agnostic churches. And it was a church where the followers of Mary Magdalene were. And I remember reading in the brochure the night before where they said, you know, you had to cover up, no shorts, no tank tops, no back outs, no sundresses. You know, they were very, very specific. And so I remember, you know, going, okay, I'm gonna put on my summer dress, to put my shawl and everything, scarf. And we went, and I was the only one that they allowed in. The rest of the group, I wanted to go because I just was so fascinated with understanding the faith and the religion of those who were descendants of the followers of Mary Magdalene. And I ended up meeting up with them later. I stayed. And everybody, because they weren't dressed appropriately. Everybody wore shorts. And so I understood the importance of approaching it with reverence. I've been to some spaces in Nigeria where you have to come there and dress a certain way. So for me, when I approach these ancient and sacred spaces, I make sure that I'm in a space of reverence, in a space of gratitude, you know, in a space of a prayerful space, and just being grateful and just wanting to draw in and soak in whatever the ancestors or whatever the artifacts will bring me just by connecting to that energy. And so I want to teach, especially our people, that so that we understand how to draw from our history and from the remnants of our history. And it's just, you know, it's just something, it just hit me, it touched me, and I was like, wow, look at this. And we just have no clue. And then you have people who are so-called civilized in other countries who look at us and laugh and say, oh, we're so savage. But, you know, we're taught to teach and train. And so that's the goal with Sajdah House. So I mentioned on the live yesterday that during this week-long period, I wanted you all to celebrate with me, and let's work on getting the property completed. We just got a little bit of ways to go, you know. So I'm just grateful. I'm really, really, really grateful. Very grateful that at this point in time, and I just have a level of certainty about just, you know, whatever's on the horizon, that Allah is there and Allah is with us, and He's gonna bless us. So anyway, that's what that is. Tomorrow night we have Sister Samaya on the Mind of an Entrepreneur show. She's got 24 karat, which is her skincare, as well as her jewelry line. So I'm excited to have a conversation with her. And then Saturday on the Sajdah, oh, thank you, brother J. Kareem. And then Saturday on the Sajdah Saturday Morning Coffee Talks, we're going to do the Queen of Sheba. So I just been studying her for the last couple of weeks, and just trying to pick up her vibe and catch her. And I'm starting to, this is the crazy thing, when you dive into this history, there's so many different angles that people come from, and folks arguing, especially in the case of Queen of Sheba, who owns her? Where's she from? You know, is she from Yemen? Is she from the Sudan? Where's she from? She married Solomon. What does that mean? And so just in studying it and watching a lot of videos and reading of her in the Bible and in certain parts of the Quran where it's hinted at about her, it just had taken me a while to catch her. And so now I feel like I've caught her, and I got her spirit, and I understand her. I understand why she approached Solomon, and I understand why she was one of his wives, and I get it. And so just catching her is interesting, and so we're gonna just talk about that, just to put that in our arsenal of historic weapons that we have when we're modeling certain behaviors as conscious entrepreneurs, because interestingly enough, all these great women in the Bible were generally centered around some aspect of commerce and business. And so it's really given me a new certainty and a new way of looking at what I believe that I was called to do. And now I'm just starting to look and study like building economic structures and what that would look like and what it means and things like that. So I've been doing writing, working on a new book. I'm actually working on 3 books, 2 that I'm writing, pretty much souling myself. So, okay, family. So with that, I just wanted to really just make sure I went live, make sure I kept my word. And secondly, talk to y'all about this museum party. I just wanted to see what y'all thought, because a friend of mine called me and sent me that video and I was like, what? So I was really shocked. And so also what we want to make sure that we'll be doing is showing our youth, our students, how to approach a sacred space. How do you document a sacred space? How do you uncover a sacred space? You know, how do you preserve and make sure that a space stays sacred? And then when you build your businesses or you develop these sacred spaces, oh, thank you, sir. And you develop these sacred spaces, you learn how to build a legacy space. And what I mean by legacy space, look around you and look at all of the brands that are older brands that you're around. Like, I'm looking at a banana. So like the Chiquita brand, or, you know, Chase Bank or Morgan Stanley. Some of these companies are over 100 years old. Goodyear tires, Firestone. So you have to ask yourself, how is it that these companies have lasted hundreds of years, or at least 100 years? How have they lasted generations? Sometimes they even skip a generation, right? So you may have a father or a mother that may build an organization. They pass it down to a child. The child ain't feeling it. And then the grandchild picks it up and moves on from there. How is that possible? That's because they know how to build legacy businesses. And so it's one of the things I'm going to cover and some of the classes that I'm going to be teaching, some of the things that we want to share with our youth in connection with Sajdah House and the home of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. How do we lock things in place? And as Black people, we think it's tied to an entity. So we think, we think it's tied to certain kinds of entities. So if there's an LLC or, you know, an S Corp or a C Corp, you don't tie the legacy to that, because you have no way of knowing if that LLC, that S Corp, that C Corp is going to be around in 20 years. You have no way of knowing that if you leave your child $1 million, that they won't trip out and blow it and then it be gone. You have no real way of knowing that. So you have to structure these organizations with foundations and with trust and with rules around the operation that can't be changed and can't be broken. You want to solidify them so that those organizations will stay in place. So as we're talking about generational wealth, we have to make sure that we really truly understand what that is. There's a lot of conversations about insurance policies and becoming your own bank, and that's wisdom. But it's supreme wisdom to make sure that it doesn't die 1 or 2 generations from now. So when you learn about the Rockefellers and the DuPonts and the Vanderbilts, and like I said, all these other people, even the original builder of 4847 South Woodlawn Avenue, Mr. William French Burroughs, and his wife, Louisa Libby. Louisa Libby's father started the Libby's Food Company. She married the president of the company, and together they developed and expanded the Libby's Food Company, the canning company. And Libby still exists to this day, and they were around doing this in the early 1900s or the late 1600s. This very same man, Mr. William French Burroughs, in this very same house that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad purchased in 1952, had a lot of powerful meetings in that house with his brothers. He was a Jewish Mason. And so as a Jewish Mason, he had business meetings there. So the distributor of the sewing machine, the Singer Sewing Machine Company, met with him. This is documented in the history. Some of the parties and events that he had, they met once a week. Mr. Goodyear, who lived around the corner, Montgomery Ward, the owner of Spiegel, the originator of Spiegel, even the people who ran Levi's Jeans, the Hershey's, the Wrigley's, they took turns. But Mr. Brule, because of his rank in the Masonic order, many people came to his house, which was 4847 South Woodlawn Avenue. And a lot of those brands we still recognize. They're still here to this day. So what did they talk about, and what kind of structures did they set up to make sure that their children didn't just blow the money? Because we have no way of knowing that. How do we set up these legacy type of organizations? Like I said, a lot of us think it's just, let me make sure. A lot of people think it's a matter of just making sure that nothing is in your name and putting stuff in the name of a business. But it's more than that. It's bigger than that. It's not just saying, I don't own anything. Everything's in my business name. Because you don't know if that business is going to be there 20, 30 years from now. So what structures are in place that have been in place for hundreds of years? And what do you put in the policies, the procedures, and the rules that will guarantee that your way of thinking and your way of life will be passed down from generation to generation? So that's the kind of thing that we want. And then including in that how you approach this property with reverence, and not like what we saw at this museum in Atlanta, unfortunately. And I don't even, it's almost at the point where you can't blame people who don't know. But the other side of it is like, how come you don't know? How come you don't know? So anyway, so thank you all. Thank you. Like I said, I'm celebrating my personal spiritual week between today and September 9th. So every single day, I'm going to try to go live. Make sure you are out there. Last thing I have to say, if you are in support, which you should be, of the completion of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House, and let's say you like, look, I can't get a coin, then pass the word on. Pass the word. We have sponsorships available. We have coins still available. We want to meet our deadline by being done. Want it to be by the end of the year. So we gotta push. We got some work to do. Okay. So all right, family. So with that, thank you everybody for joining. And I will talk to you all tomorrow. Inshallah. Peace and blessings.